The Bones and Bobbins podcast is now on Patreon. Would you like to access bonus episodes, digital extras, exclusive merch, and more? Join us in the Curiosity Shop at patreon.com/bonesandbobbins.
Your generous support helps make the show happen and will also earn you our very eternal gratitude and entry into our private Patreon-only Facebook group so you can hang out with us. In a dusty old shop on a forgotten old street, you'll find two witches with books 3 boxes deep. Next to rusty old needles and faded red thread, you'll come in for yarn, but leave with pigments instead. Whether poisons or patterns, we're always discreet, where creepy and crafty and morbidity meet. Welcome to the Bones and Bobbins podcast.
Hello, morbid makers. We are your slightly creepy,
Mildly disconcerting.
somewhat sinister,
Ooh, delightfully discomposed.
opaquely odd,
Merrily morbid.
marvelously misanthropic hosts.
I'm Haley from Red Handled Scissors and the Very Serious Crafts podcast.
Hi, I'm Natalie from Uberdork Designs, an official murderino maker.
Very fancy.
Very fun. So hi,
Hi.
how's it going?
It's going well. I got a lot of kittens.
Yes, you do, and they're super fun. They are growing alarmingly quickly. They seem from pictures.
Yes. I made the mistake of trying to put them in their kitten playpen a
Oh,
couple days ago. And turns out they don't really fit very well in there anymore.
they'll need a new one.
Ugh. I just put it away. Like, forget it. I give up on kittens, but I do want to tell you, and I think maybe I mentioned this before, but we never did anything about it, that I ordered us frozen Charlotte dolls, and they've arrived.
Yay! Also,
Yes, so I'm gonna open them
That box.
right now.
that box in and of itself.
is a terrifying box.
It is.
And I will probably make a video of all of it for Patreon folks to see. But it is everything about this purchase has just been a little questionable.
Would you expect anything else when it has to do with us?
No. No. It's just about right for us. It's just, yeah. I think it's really just the creepy box that it showed up in, and it's been sitting on my work table with selenite and black tourmaline on top of it for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
And so,
Just making sure.
you never know.
You don't. You don't.
Why won't you open? Oh no.
See? I was like, oh, you thought you'd be slick? You thought you'd be fun?
Seriously though, why don't you open? Is there a hook?
Come out and play with us.
Oh no, I think the the creepy hook on the outside actually does. Oh no.
Oh, no.
Oh no. No. It's a drawer. No.
That's so weird.
I don't even know what to do with this. I don't.
She's busting
Uh-oh.
out tools now. It's serious.
No, I got it.
Oh, boy.
No, it really it does have 2 metal loops holding the box shut.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay,
Ooh.
it's open, but see?
It's like it knew. It's that
Oh,
They need to
wow.
be contained, clearly.
They... They're wrapped up like little mummies. I think I have the blonde one in my hand. There's a blonde one and a brunette, so let's see. Oh, God. They're wrapped up in ancient tissue paper. Nope, this one's the brunette.
Course.
Huh.
Oh, hello.
I think its shoes used to be blue.
Blue is what it looks.
Yeah,
Those lips are still intact.
So are the eyes, kind of. Its butt crack is definitely intact.
Neat! Look at that little butt. It's so
Yep.
cute. And like the little line in the small of the back.
Well, that's a 7, I think. It's marked 401 and then 7 below it. All right, so that's that one, and it's very old. Wow. Yeah, so that happened. Let's have a look at the next one, I guess. This may want to end up being an extra for Patreon, since it's taken much longer than I anticipated to break into it. Oh, this one is wrapped up in extremely old decorative paper towel.
Oh, okay.
What's wrong with her head?
Oh, no.
All right, so here's the blonde one.
Oh, she's decidedly more creepy.
Yeah, well, because her eyes and her mouth are all really there. The blonde,
What's
kind
the dot
of
on her forehead?
I don't. That's what yes. Her butt's a little more squished because she's German, apparently. And it says Germany 320 P6 on her back.
Wow.
So there we are. Welcome, small dolls. I will send you one. Well, they don't feel scary. And they're kind of sweet. They're little. I can't get the lid of the box back on. So I'll be sending you one of those.
Yay!
And probably this box, so you can experience it for yourself.
I will have my tools ready.
Oh my goodness. So anyway, yeah, I have kittens. I have 2 kittens and 2 frozen Charlotte dolls.
Nice.
That's where I'm at. How about you?
I have all kinds of new toys to play with. I'm expanding the Uberdork Designs offerings.
Ooh.
Which will also probably start with me doing some much requested Bones and Bobbins merch. Starting out with, I ordered some very cool vinyl sticker paper to print on and make stickers. And they'll be die cut because I have a machine to die cut it and everything. So I'm
fancy.
I'm also working on a design for a corset kitten sticker. Because
if you need any kittens to model, boy, do I have kittens for you.
Yes. But which is the small thing that I ordered. The big thing is I found a Epson printer that I'm redoing into a sublimation printer.
Cool.
So I'm hacking it so I can do sublimation printing. So I got everything to hack it. Have the ink, I have paper, and I got a 5-in-1 heat press to do mugs and t-shirts and all of that stuff. So, and I've been doing t-shirts and mugs and stuff like that, especially when I do like craft shows or I have a couple of stores and shops in Milwaukee and stuff that I sell at. And I've been doing the, vinyl with that, but sublimation just seems like a whole lot more fun. And just another thing. So, I'm super excited to play with all of that and then have stuff available, to give to our Patreon guinea pigs and
our,
then open it
our
up to other
beloved,
people. Beloved.
Yes,
They are
our
beloved.
maybe they can be our frozen Charlottes.
Yeah.
This first round, our beloved frozen Charlottes. Please don't die.
Please don't. I kind of want to make them like little, like, and when you said that, I'm picturing like a little, like, Sabrina style frozen Charlotte cheerleading squad.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Because, goth cheerleaders. Indeed.
Yeah. I was a goth gymnast, so
There you go.
not dissimilar, but
Speaking
a
of
lot
them,
more flips.
we should probably take a quick break to thank all of our fantastic Curiosity Shop members over on Patreon. And also, it would be a good time to give a totally normal and not at all creepy welcome to our newest member, Heather Heron.
Thanks, Heather.
Yay, welcome aboard.
Now I want to watch Heather's.
Right? There we go.
Oh, Winona Ryder.
Yes, and croquet.
Yes. All right. Anyway, now that I've had my teenage moment.
Right.
Yes. Hot ladies of Haley's teenage years. Did you have the free Winona shirt? Because I definitely had the free Winona shirt.
Absolutely. Also, I have to let you know that we are not all that far from Winona, Minnesota, where she was born and named after.
Interesting.
She does
I had no idea.
She also does a local commercial for. She does actually, it's a string of commercials, and I think it's for like a web design company, but it's all based on doing a website for Winona, Minnesota. I will have to send you those clips.
Oh, that's funny.
Because I will forever love her. Forever.
Yes.
Like, and I think anybody that grew up in our time period like that.
Oh, yes. Just always.
Mm-hmm. Her in and of
so
herself.
now that we've gone, yeah.
But then she got Christian Slater too. So
I know, right?
So much.
Oh,
teenage hormonal worship.
We've aged ourselves.
I'm fine with it.
Yes. No, I feel great about that. Yes, and that era was also Angelina Jolie before she got
hackers.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh God, she was so hot in Hackers because she had this like androgynous.
Yes.
Like. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that's why
Absolutely.
Winona Ryder was hot too.
Right.
Yes.
Now that you mention it.
Oh my gosh. All right. Now that we've had our moments, I should probably finish talking to the patrons. So thanks again, Heather, and you're the best. And we would totally go explore hidden old graveyards in the woods with you, or, go watch old Winona Ryder movies also.
Or play croquet.
Any of the above, below.
Right. We will not bring the frozen Charlotte dolls. We promise.
I don't know if I promise. Yes, well. Anyway. So, which one of us wants to go first?
Whichever one. I am completely okay either way.
Well,
movable or non-movable.
I was going to say, yours don't move, so maybe we start with don't move and go into movable?
Sure, we can do that. I'm up for that.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yes, we're professionals. We've planned this. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk about mannequins. Also, so we drive into the city to do completely contactless pickup for groceries and such.
Right.
And there's this turn, and we drive through a lot of country. And there's this, it's on a turn, and there's it's a small garden, and there is somebody who has a mannequin dressed up, presumably for a scarecrow. However, it changes outfits and changes positions. And the first time we saw it, it was a really fucking creepy mannequin. And now it's still creepy, but less creepy. But I made sure when we did our pickup this weekend, knowing full well I was talking mannequins, that I took a picture of it. So,
nice.
Absolutely, we'll be putting that out on the Instagrams. But so
yeah, there's a notoriously haunted house on that same in that same vein that is right near Greenwood Cemetery that I've talked about a million times already, even though we're only on episode 8. And it definitely, I don't know who owns it. It's sort of a mysterious place, but there's definitely a doll posed in the window just to freak people out. Yes. And it, like, the decorations change. Nobody lives there, but, like, it gets decorated for holidays and stuff. And it's a very weird and mysterious thing. And one of my favorite people who does, or one of my favorite companies that does ghost history tours in New York, posted a photo, and it was supposed to be of the doll in the window. Except there was a face that wasn't the doll in another window.
Oh my goodness. That
and
contains
so I
everything
pointed
that I
it out, and I was like,
Did you mean for that to happen?
Yes, I just thought you should know.
It all makes my heart so happy.
Anyway, so, mannequins,
like everything that we seem to deep dive, the history of mannequins is another crazy sketchy one, and they actually go way further back than anticipated, but they didn't know that until like 1923. So when Howard Carter opened King Tut's tomb, he discovered an armless, legless wooden torso that was made exactly to the pharaoh's measurements, standing next to the chest that held the ruler's clothing.
Wait, so just a bust of him?
Right. But it was his exact measurements. And as we just did our little mummy thing, I was like, huh. So
I bet it was used to dress him.
It was. So they dated it back to 1350 BC. And it turns out, like, Nero's wife had inanimate surrogate models, like, done in her own image to help her review her clothing choices. So it's not entirely all that far off.
It's like Clueless with the Polaroids.
Right?
Or whatever it was.
Yeah, and then she had a little computer thing.
I tried to program something very similar at that age.
Between that and weird science, we had such high hopes for computers.
So, anyway.
So, though fake people, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, have come in like various forms over the years. Children's toys, wax effigies, tailor's dummies, artist lay figures, like all of them can kind of be lumped in with dummies.
Victorian mourning effigies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the European fashion doll, though, is pretty much where I'm going to start, and where most people consider this the true start of, like, the modern mannequin. Now, not all mannequins were used for fashion. There were ivory mannequins that were used by doctors in the 17th century to study medical and like anatomy.
Yeah, and anatomical Venuses.
Right, and exactly. They were like a teaching aid for pregnancy and childbirth. And like there's only 180 known surviving ancient medical mannequins worldwide. So that is now on my white list.
And there are some here. So, you should come see them. There are multiple. And there's a book on just them from the Morbid Anatomy Museum, I think. Anyway, awesome. I just added this literal topic to our topic suggestion lists for later. Because I think we need...
I agree. It was real hard. For me not to just dive head first.
No.
And as awesome as that is, I totally had to pick a path, and I went with fashion.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just got so excited.
No, that's... Girl. That's why we do this, so we can talk about shit we love.
Okay, yes, fair enough.
So while I chose fashion, don't worry, at one point shit still gets creepy. So
Oh, yeah.
again, years kind of debatable, but it was still pretty much undoubtedly the French that we have to thank for mannequins.
I'm shocked.
Right. So back in 1391, Charles IV of Spain shipped a life-size doll dressed in the style of the French court to the Queen of England as part of an ongoing peace negotiation. Henry IV dispatched miniature, elegantly attired dolls to the Medici women. Remember Catherine in our last friggin' episode who banned wide waists? Yeah, to update them on the British trends. And these dolls that went back and forth.
We didn't have fashion plates and...
Right. These dolls, actually, there's a section there. These dolls during wartime had special permission to be passed. Like whoever was carrying the doll had special privilege to go through unharmed to deliver these friggin' dolls. Like they got a pass during wartime.
Was it so if you were invited to the court or needed to appear at court, you would be appropriately attired?
Part of it was that, and part of it was just to keep things abreast in fashion. But then if you go back to our episode where we talk about corsets, or no, we talk about pockets, how they took the pockets out.
Right.
So that women couldn't, mysteriously, pass stuff in their pocket during wartime. So I think there's a lot of really cool shit that we could probably drum up in just clothing during wartime.
I bet those dolls weren't hollowed out and carrying secret messages at all.
Not at all. Little embroidered messages on the butt.
Yeah, you'd never do that.
Never. So, and Marie Antoinette kept her mothers and sisters appraised of the latest vogues at Versailles with, again, elaborately closed figures that she regularly sent to them.
Tiny panniers.
Right.
They would look like little mustaches.
Yes. After the French Revolution, Marie was not the only thing that lost her head. Fashion dolls were replaced with drawings and these utilitarian dress forms made of wire and leather and wicker, and they were often headless and basically just padded coat hangers that displayed clothes with zero personality. So apparently the French just, I don't know what they were doing. Maybe we should probably see how big opium was there at the time. They just kind of checked out for a bit.
Well, they're sort of birdcage looking.
Yeah. But then they regained their senses in time to introduce the full-bodied mannequin in 1870.
Oh, they found cocaine.
Yes. So the original mannequins were paper mache and then cast in wax. Then entered the Industrial Revolution. So this was a time that sewing machines were invented. Stores now had these giant plate glass windows, and cities began to have electricity. The men and women that strolled the boulevards were now considered an audience, and then the mannequins were considered kind of like the players. So the fashion goods then would be displayed in these lifelike room settings with mannequins known as open displays.
And they still are in New York.
Right. And almost the big cities that I've been in.
I don't know.
So yeah.
I only live
Chicago,
here.
San Francisco. But yeah, so the windows are they rely on themes and narratives rather than a bunch of goods for sale. So
yeah,
instead of seeing a bunch of things, you'd see women at a table with kitchen items, and there would be not only them in their clothing, but then there would be fabric draped behind them to show the different fabrics that outfit came in. And so they were giving them a precise domestic or cultural setting, and then giving them quality over practicality and price. So these displays, the fixtures, the stands, the mannequins, all became something that people loved to crowd around and see, and they really, really pushed the economy in a lot of ways. And became a form of entertainment. Millions came to stare at these little make-believe worlds that were frozen in place. The female mannequins that stared back at them in those early days were big busted heroines in 3 basic poses. You had the left foot forward, you had your right foot forward, or both feet together. And they cost $15 a piece, which was a pretty tidy sum at that point. This was an interesting little thing to me that I was really excited about. So as these retail prospered, so did the display industry. L. Frank Baum.
Lord and Taylor is what I was thinking of.
Oh,
Lord and Taylor is the one that's of the time period. Because they've existed for 104 years or something.
How long has Bergdorf's been around? They're pretty old too, right?
Yes. But they are further north, and I don't go there.
So,
they all sort of happened about the same time when it became the Ladies' Mile.
Yes.
I think.
So,
anyway.
L. Frank Baum, who went on to create the Immortal Oz books.
Yeah!
He was fascinated with the display industry. And he got his start in 1898 as the editor of the first trade magazine on show windows. And 2 years later, he wrote an entire book on it. This is my favorite part. In the book, he discussed the importance of mannequins to attract customers to the store goods. This is his quote. "Without such displays," he wrote, "the merchant sinks into oblivion. The busy world forgets him and he is left to himself, to rust, vegetate, or to fail ignominiously." The same obstacles the Tin Woodman, Scarecrow, and Cowardly Lion would later face in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, dear.
Right? I was like, that's kind of crazy.
I mean, not wrong.
Right? So let's talk about these glamorous window models. They were clumsy. They were heavy. They weighed about 300 pounds. They also included realism. How real? Oh, we're talking serving some taxidermy realness with actual teeth, glass eyes, and real hair. Yes, it gets better. So their feet were made of iron, legs and arms of dense wood, and the torsos and head of solid wax, which made them hard to clean, but also they would occasionally melt under the lights. So those wax heads, full of teeth and hair and glass eyes, just melting away in the front. Like, can you imagine?
I want to know if they had hair other places.
Oh, right.
I mean, can you imagine being a bored craftsperson of this? Right. I'm just saying I might not be able to resist.
Oh, there would be all kinds of realness, like, shoved in there. So, World War I. Practicality came about. Mannequins reflected that social change. Shed their hats, unlaced the corsets, exposed knees and ankles, and flattened the Victorian monobreast. As women became practical, then the mannequin shapes followed suit. So now they were also rocking movable limbs rather than the stiff Victorian poses. So by the 20s, the formal straight-laced, big-boobed Victorian woman, gone, rejected, replaced by the easygoing, boyish, androgynous flapper who favored a slender, straight figure with a flat chest. So
much easier to dress.
Right? Mannequins of this period emulated the transition of this preference, but they also revealed the influence of Art Deco and the Art Nouveau movements with their geometric renditions of the human form. Modernism also brought with it not only design, but also new materials. So Siegel and Stockman, who I think they're still around, introduce fully paper mache mannequins, which were 100 pounds less, and they were more heat resistant. Pierre Imon.
Oh yeah, I sent you that creepy doll, the creepy little kid one, didn't I?
Yeah, yeah, it's creepy. So Pierre Imon took the mannequin to new heights with modernist figures, new poses, and some of the first mannequins with darker skin tones.
Oh.
He modeled a mannequin after dancer, singer, actress Josephine Baker. It was amazing. And fierce as fuck. So that's pretty cool. Some are even subversive, showing a lesbian couple at the Streets of Paris exhibition at the Moulin Rouge in 1920s. Right?
Wow.
I know. I'm like, I kind of think like that era would have been a good one.
Yeah, but the Moulin Rouge also, like, that was naughty anyway.
Yeah,
so
yes. Exactly. So that was the 20s, and then the onset of the Great Depression in the 30s. A more conservative approach to fashion ended up kind of displacing that of the 20s. Mannequin makers such as Lester Gaba makes his models, which were the Gaba girls, and they were reminiscent of Marlene Dietrich and Greta Garbo. So their bodies were thin, and they were regally posed, and they really tried to model them after like real New York socialites.
Okay.
So new materials of this
Not
decade,
creepy at all.
No, right? Australian doll maker turned mannequin manufacturer Kath Cruz devised a metal skeleton that covered it with skin-like material, which then enabled even more of a variety of positions. Mannequins also had softer features than because of it, so they had higher cheekbones, more oval faces, and they could actually, again, not only the poses but the expressions could be more lifelike. Lester Gaba designed the lifelike Cynthia, who was modeled after 1932 wealthy socialite Cynthia Wells. So Cynthia was a mannequin that weighed 100 pounds. She had realistic imperfections and freckles, and she was in a perpetually seated pose with a cigarette in her hand.
Oh, so, wait, I know this.
Gaba took her out for several public dates, garnering so much attention that they got a spread in Life magazine and they became celebrities.
That's amazing.
Gossip columnists began writing about Cynthia as if she was a living, breathing socialite. And Tiffany's even sent Cynthia jewelry to wear for seeing a unique PR opportunity. She even got invited to a royal wedding and received copious amounts of fan mail. And at the end of the period...
Which royal wedding did she get invited to? Must have been Princess Grace of Monaco?
That seems about right.
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
At the end of the time period, poor Cynthia slipped from a salon chair and smashed to bits, and she is no more. And I was like, she loved it.
Was it murder? I think there's a mystery to be solved there.
Right, from a salon chair.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of her, and I get it.
So, and not to be, outdone, then we got 1939, surrealist, one of my favorite weird fucking men, Salvador Dali, is commissioned to create a window display at the New York department store Bonwit Teller.
That's a terrible idea.
Basing it on the Narcissus complex. Dali lined a bathtub with black Persian lambskin, filled it with darkened water, sprinkled narcissus flowers, and disembodied wax hands reached out from under the water, holding mirrors towards an 1890s wax mannequin. Her body clad only in feathers, her head topped with a blonde wig, crawling with fake bugs, and blood-red tears streaming from her eyes. I want photos so bad. The display was quickly removed due to complaints from shoppers.
There must be photos.
There has to be. When he heard the news that it was removed, he went back to this display and threw the bathtub through the glass plate window onto Fifth Avenue and got arrested.
I think I may have found...
Like, everything about that sounds pretty amazing to me.
Well, so, I think that there have been... I think he's done more than one. There are a lot of questionable choices.
But you gotta love. So, I mean, that was... I think that was pretty much the height of mannequin life.
Wow.
The 30s were it. So then we got the 40s and 50s. Everything else past this kind of pales compared to it, I think. But so the shop windows during Second World War II, again, were wartime, back to subdued. Bright colors clothes are replaced with, somber expressions of patriotic duty. But there were material advancements. Wolf and Vine became the first company to create a completely plastic mannequin. Only problem was display windows caused a chemical, like the lights in them caused a chemical reaction in the new material. turning it a green color, forcing the manufacturer to take it off the market. So it's probably another poisonous green we should have included.
I mean, there are so many at this point.
Right. And again, wartime rationing, dress silhouette becomes slimmer and less embellished, and the mannequin is made shorter than its predecessor to preserve precious resources. As troops returned home to the 1945, the full-figured, voluptuous mannequin, along with its smile, kind of started to come back a bit.
And pointed boobs.
Totally pointed boobs. So then we've got the 50s and 60s, which marks a boom in U.S. consumerism. Mannequins became more uniform in shape and size, embodying the period's ideal notion of female from, like, stores across the country. So, but it also enters this weird combination of prudishness and then just completely unrealistic body ideals. So, in the 40s and 50s, the American companies sanded the nipples off of older mannequins because they were deemed too overtly sexual, according to mannequin expert Dr. Marcia Bentley Hale, which I love that there is a
That's
mannequin
a job title. Mm-hmm.
Right? A job title with a doctor attached to it. So, and then like Marilyn Monroe, the most popular movie star of the period, mannequins started having these tiny defined waistlines, rounded hips, high boobs, sloping shoulders, and the perfect and for most unattainable hourglass figure. And then 1959 gave us the first Barbie doll, which again, her hourglass figure, it's manufactured by Mattel, and 3 dolls are sold every second.
Huh.
Which was crazy pants. Also, fun note, during the 1950s, mannequins were used in nuclear tests to help show the effects of nuclear weapons on humans.
Well, I bet they exploded.
They went boom. 1960s and 70s, mannequins embodied the changing beauty standards of the sexual revolution. Although appearing different in style from the decade previous, they still ignore the size and shape of the average consumer. This was the start of, like, the supermodel era, during which, like, stick thing Twiggy reigned supreme.
I love Twiggy.
Right. So,
I mean, she's problematic.
Yeah.
I think. But,
well, now they had new fiberglass materials, and that made mannequins lighter and sturdier. And nipples returned. So, huzzah!
Hi guys! Did they just glue them back on? Like, what was the process of returning nipples? Did they have, like, false nipples put into bras?
Re-nipplification.
Oh my goodness.
So, and again, now we kind of went back to the whole, our friend Cynthia, and that high fashion mannequins started to copy celebrities. So much so that Adele Rootstein makes Twiggy her own mannequin, mimicking her minuscule little body measurements and copying her facial features. So Twiggy becomes Rootstein's most famous mannequin. Rootstein also produces the first well-known ethnic figure, Danya Luna, and her likeness was consistently positioned in feline poses, which is fucking problematic because it reaffirmed the whole animalistic and overly sexualized stereotype for women of color. So Rootstein can suck it.
Could we not?
Right. 70s, 80s.
Why not just a nice pantsuit?
Right. Or like every other human being.
Cocktail dress.
Right. So, 70s and 80s, as opposed to the glamorous celebrity mannequins of the 60s, mannequins of the 70s, became more abstract and kind of faceless, slowly morphing into, like, the headless drone-like figures, which kind of gained runway popularity in the 90s.
Yeah, those are scary, and I don't like them. They remind me of department stores of my later youth.
Right, and then during that time, mannequins are typically painted, they started to be painted in solid black, gray, and white. 1970s also saw the introduction of petite mannequins, though, designed to model clothing for women of a shorter height, typically 5'3". However, as journalist Helen Burgraff noted in Crane's New York Business, petite mannequins are universally several inches taller than the women for whom they are designed because clothes simply look better on taller figures.
That's true.
A size 12 in the 70s is equivalent to a size 8 today. 1980s and 90s.
That's why Marilyn Monroe was 16, but she was actually quite slim.
Exactly. So, the 80s. Enter home video exercise tape trend. And
Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies.
Yes, sweating, get in shape, girl. We got it going on. Brief focus on health and fitness. And in response, mannequins emerged with some realistically toned features. Now, I would fail if I did not mention the 1987 hit Mannequin starring Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall.
Andrew McCarthy.
Right?
He's my favorite of the Brat Pack. If he's been canceled, ignore that.
Right,
I lose track.
Right. So in Mannequin, our lovely, adorable Andrew McCarthy plays an underemployed artist that falls in love with a mannequin, which is Kim Cattrall, who only comes to life for him. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, maybe for another episode, but it also gives me the ability to kind of scoot in my fun fact, which is agalmatophilia. Agalmatophilia is sexual attraction to mannequins.
Oh, that's a thing.
It's a thing.
I mean, I know that objects, like, say, the bridges or the Eiffel Tower are a thing, but I appreciate that mannequins are their own separate
thing.
I wonder if that includes, like, the real girl dolls, like the sex dolls.
I don't know.
Or if that's a whole different thing. They are.
That's
and they also make them in male also, so I'm unsure why we're real girls still, but whatever.
Real people.
Yes, indeed.
And at the time, mannequins started to acquire realistic backbones, belly buttons, and ads. Also, and I don't know why this was included in the article I was reading, but a fun little note was 69% of Playboy magazine models weighed 15% less than the average healthy weight for their size at that time. So I think they were trying to talk about, like, okay, the belly buttons and the abs and stuff are realistic, but we're still, like, these mannequins are still not, like, in our whole ideal of human bodies and what they're supposed to look like has just gone out the fucking window.
Well, also lens refractions in photography distort just enough to make you look slightly bigger than you actually are. Yeah. And so I assume the photos looked healthy in a way that if they were actually heavier, they would look different. Yeah. I don't know.
But entered the 90s and heroin chic.
Oh, yes. My favorite of the chics.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because the 90s
Kate Moss.
Yep, exactly. Kate Moss prevailed as the ideal form at that time. But also during this time period, plus-size retailers and fashions actually gained popularity. And accordingly, larger models emerged on the market and that were closer in size to the average woman, which was a size 14 at the time. So interestingly, even plus-size mannequins are accused of not accurately representing plus-size bodies. Bust magazine reported in 2013 that historically most mannequins for larger clothes are made by just magnifying the general proportions of smaller mannequins.
That's not how that works. Right. That's like trying to make pants shorter and calling them petite. Right. That is not how proportions work. Love Haley.
Exactly. Also, fun fact, in 1991, mind you.
Yeah.
81% of U.S. 10-year-olds were afraid of becoming fat. Fuck you very much, patriarchy. because that is frightening.
I mean, that totally makes sense to me. I grew up in the aerobic studio watching my mom work out in the 80s. And so I remember being in elementary school and choosing to bring rice cakes for lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually like rice cakes, and I would put peanut butter on them, and it was less troublesome than one might think, but it was diet culture all the way.
Right. Ugh, so sad. So, for the most part now, today's commercial mannequins have departed completely from realism or variation, and instead have just kind of transformed slowly into this faceless, block-colored drones. Visual display has turned into a corporate cookie-cutter kind of reality, says Chad Michael Morissette, a mannequin collector and director of visual merchandising company CM Squared Designs. So that is the interesting turn of events that have brought us the joy and history of mannequins.
Wow.
I
was more involved than expected.
Right. Like, I was like, oh, okay, like, I get, in my head, I guess, I was thinking of, like, the evolution of the dress form, or, you know, like, it didn't quite...
Which we should also look into.
Right, I have a vintage dress form, that I scored at a Goodwill for $4.99.
That's amazing.
It is.
I have a petite dress form, but I have dreams of getting a body scan.
Ooh!
And getting, there are several dress form companies that will make to 3D scan.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
My eldest is about to create a pattern from a dress that she already has that she likes and wants to reproduce. So we're expanding on skills in our household. But
if you need any advice, let me know. I know how to do that.
But yeah, it's always really interesting. Obviously, we pick topics that we like or we have interest in, but it's always really neat to find out, like, the Dolly connection was pretty cool, and the whole frame, like
and I did find photos of part of that display, not the one you described, but another window.
I think it was taken up pretty friggin' quickly. Like, I don't know that it was up all that long. But
I mean, the one that is there is pretty terrifying. So
yeah, so those are our mannequins. Those are mannequins.
Well, so I am going to sort of take us down the Andrew McCarthy path. Yes. Where things move.
I was going to say, are we making out with Kim Cattrall?
Well, okay, fine. Or Andrew McCarthy. Either
right?
or.
Or Molly Ringwald. Because him and Molly.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said, or Molly Ringwald, because, him and Molly and Pretty in Pink.
Oh, yes. Although that
I was much more ducky.
Exactly. My favorite Andrew McCarthy movie is called Class. And it is a little-known Brat Pack movie. It's Rob Lowe. And they're at a boarding school. And Rob Lowe's the rich roommate, and Andrew McCarthy's the scholarship kid.
Oh, I'm going to so be hunting that down.
Yeah, it's deeply problematic and of its time, and also so good, and he's so cute. And
there's so many problematic, but it's so hard.
Whatever.
It's hard to go back and watch.
And honestly, Rob Lowe is one of the few square-jawed men who I am like, all right, you could get it.
He has aged very well.
Yes, he has.
Like,
so is Andrew McCarthy, actually.
Yeah, it's surprising considering how much drugs were done.
Well, they were also older during the...
Right.
Like, they weren't teenagers. Molly Ringwald was, but...
Right. And so was Anthony Michael Hall, who had his own glow-up out of nowhere.
Right.
Enter Edward Scissorhands, and you're like, what? No,
like,
that's not King of the Dweebs.
Speaking of things Winona Ryder's in.
Yeah, oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I'm going to tell you about automatons. So,
Yay.
things that come to life. All right. So, I really thought automatons were going to start much later than they actually did in history. So, we're going to start with the ancient Greeks, as it turns out.
Hey, now, get it, Greeks.
Right?
Really?
So, there are in Greek mythology many mechanical objects in stories that were probably myths, but they were actually capable of creating machines at the time that were powered by steam or water or like human powered levers. Wow. And so that technology actually existed. And one of the known items that was made by Greek inventor, mathematician, and pneumatics expert, Stestibos. And he lived around 285 to 222 BC. Okay. And so this is the time period that we're looking at.
And there was steam-powered stuff? That's really impressive.
Yeah.
Like, levers and gears I could kind of picture crude, but steam is pretty impressive.
I mean, if you're working with water and you've got the ability to do fire.
Right. Oh, that makes sense.
I mean, you can make steam. So I don't know much about how steam came into play there, but this is one of those Greek names with a silent C followed by a consonant. Oof. So Testibos, I'm going to go with. He created a water clock that was thought to be the most accurate ever made at the time, but it remained the most accurate that existed until Dutch physicist Christian Huygens invented the pendulum clock in 1656.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah. And he also invented a water organ that was the precursor to the modern pipe organ. And he may have been the originator of the idea of the siphon in connection with trying to lift water from wells.
Wow.
So maybe not, but it's often attributed to him as the originator of that idea.
Even if not, he's still got a lot of good shit under his belt there.
Right? And fun fact about him, he started life as a barber. And,
wow.
And he invented a counterweight adjustable mirror. And that is sort of how he got started. And honestly, I don't know that I knew that ancient Greeks had mirrors. Although I guess I knew that there were looking glasses in ancient Egypt. So...
Yeah. But I wouldn't have connected them.
Yeah.
Either.
So that seems like a
Greek
lot.
guy?
Right? So moving along to the Middle Ages. Basically the Muslims had automata on lock at this point. So in 8th century Baghdad, there were wind-powered statues, which is kind of cool. And
that sounds fun.
Yeah, and then in 9th century Baghdad, a group of brothers called the Banu Musa created a steam-powered automatic flute player that was probably the first working example of a programmable machine.
Wow.
That's 9th century. So, yeah. And then in 1206, inventor Al-Jaziri published a book called Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices.
No humility there at all. They're
No.
just ingenious.
And many of his inventions were for entertainment purposes or as jokes. Like, there was a, like, vessel of, like, a drinking vessel that looked like it was full and then it was empty when you tried to drink from it. Like,
that's hilarious.
He made very bizarre things, but he also made some things. A lot of these inventions were made by people for the amusement of the wealthy. And so he made, and this is in 1206, a water-powered automaton orchestra that was built on a floating boat that included 2 drummers, a harpist, and a flautist, and a rowing oarsman to keep the boat in motion. And the musicians actually played music, and they moved. And this...
Crazy pants.
Yeah, and this contraption used pegs that turned levers to create the different sounds and move the mechanical figures in lifelike ways. And it was probably the first example of a programmable computer. Although there are many, many things that are said to be the first example of a programmable computer. Right. So, wink, wink at Miss Lovelace here.
Yes. Can you imagine how much that scared the shit out of the people at the time? Like, depending on how realistic these looked. Like, if you just...
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it's sort of... like, how the special effects in Ghostbusters look kind of stupid now, but they scared the shit out of you when you were, like, 8.
I hate that.
I
showed Poltergeist to my kids, and they were like, really? Really? And I was like, shut up, it's scary.
I am not going to watch it again because I'm still scared of it.
Right.
And so that was in the Middle East, and specifically within the Muslim world in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, in Europe, the birth of clockwork was taking hold in medieval city-states. And often these were for church bells and clocks that provided regularity for city residents because they were no longer, before people lived in the cities, there were seasons that dictated what they did, and sunrise and sunset that dictated like the farming and things like that. And so these clocks provided sort of that structure for city residents. And in 13th century Bern, Switzerland, the Zeitglocke was made, and I've seen this in person, and it's amazing. 500 years after it was made, it still works perfectly, and it gives a moving show to people who watch it, and it's really, really cool. And so these really early works were masterpieces of art and engineering, and they also, if they had figures that moved, like the Zeitglocke, and other similar clockwork pieces, they often taught lessons in morality and virtue. But as seen from the point of view of aristocrats, who were the people who were having these built. And so there are examples of like some extremely intricate like cityscapes that showed how like the perfect utopian society functions, everybody's doing their part, yada yada. And the aristocrats are just sort of looking around while everybody else is diligently doing their jobs. And it seemed like this whole peaceful, idyllic scene, and also very cool because like, the things all move.
Right.
But that wasn't necessarily what was happening. So basically, making autonoma relied on very skilled but poorly paid artisans. And so as automata became more intricate, smaller and smaller mechanisms were being used and being made, but they were all being made by hand. So, like, I'm not sure if you've ever considered how a screw was historically made.
Oh, I have. My dad is a tool and die maker.
Oh,
So if he was ever doing anything and he's like, oh, I don't have that part, let me go make it. So yeah.
You know exactly what a
do.
screw plate is.
Yep.
So there are these just microscopic screw plates that exist where, for people who aren't familiar, you're basically shoving a pin, like a piece of metal the size of a pin, and forcing it in to this small, tiny hole in a screw plate that had threads inside, and forcing it in transformed the pin into the same threaded object, although opposite, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, like, these were extremely, extremely skilled makers. And there were absolutely, like, famous watchmakers and horologists, or horologist. I'm unclear if we pronounce that H. But for the most part, the people doing the actual small, like, tiny specific manual labor were doing so by candlelight in the dark for next to nothing. So that's fun.
Which kills
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
It's like that. I mean, it's historically like that. I mean, you'd have any craft, whether it was swords, armor.
Yeah, carpentry.
Anything. Right. Anything was there would be these people that were famously good at it, but they would still get paid shit for it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, New York City is a prime example. Like, all of our grand buildings, that's why they're grand, because labor was cheap and there was plenty of it. And skilled labor coming over from many, many places through Ellis Island. So, anyway, back to the Renaissance, which is where we're headed next.
Yeah.
So, with more clockwork happening, like I said, it got smaller and smaller, and with increasing detail, and things became, like, the actual physical pieces became smaller, even to the point of being able to be carried around in your hand. And so much of the inspiration for the development of automata during the Renaissance period was in part thanks to the French philosopher and mathematician, because you could do those two things back in the day.
Sure.
René Descartes. I should know Descartes. There we go. René Descartes. Say, I know that name. This is nonsense. Who wrote about how he thought the bodies of animals were no more complex than machines, and that internal organs could be basically recreated via mechanical instruments. And, like, he just thought so. He thought everything was that simple. So,
those were some fun dinner parties he was at.
Now enter Jacques de Vaucanson.
Ooh.
Who is a creepy motherfucker.
Nice.
So he was around from 1709 to 1782. He was known to be a pioneer in simulated human movement, and he also thought that there was basically no difference between humans and machines. And in his spare time, he took anatomy classes to learn how human bodies worked so he could recreate those functions with clockwork. And when I say anatomy classes, I mean he dissected corpses.
Okay.
I mean in a learning setting, presumably, but
it's a little less troubling that way.
Yeah,
Not like, in his basement.
It may well have been in his basement. I don't know. And so to him, automaton were supposed to be self-moving machines that mimicked human movement. And my favorite part about this madman is that one of the automata that he is most famous for making is called the digesting duck, which was a copper automaton that was able to eat, digest, and excrete its food. And it even included an internal chemical lab to decompose the food, which is a whole lot of work. Yeah, whole lot of work for basically a shitting duck robot.
Right.
And I feel like maybe, just maybe, he took that whole recreating anything a body can do with clockwork idea a bit far. Here.
I'm saying,
but you know
that's
what?
way more complex than Baby Alive was, and
I was
Princess
exactly what I was thinking. I'm kind of here for it. Like,
yeah,
wow,
you go.
Wow, yeah, and you
It's
can
commitment.
find diagrams of this thing. It is something. Okay. So, next up comes the person who probably made the automata that give you nightmares.
Yay.
Yes, so Pierre-Jacques Droz was a 1721 to 1790 living watchmaker.
Okay.
And the reason that you probably have seen what he's made is because the things that he made were basically the dolls that can move.
No.
Yep,
no.
but they don't just like blink or wave, they actually do things. And there are three that he's most famous for. And they were built by him, his son Henri Louis, and Jean-Frédéric Lechaut. And so these three created The Musician, which is a female organ player, but the music isn't recorded or played by a music box. The doll plays a real, custom-built instrument by pressing the keys with her fingers.
Oh my.
Yeah. And there are movements of her chest that show her breathing, and she follows her fingers with both her head and her eyes. And she also makes some of the more subtle movements that someone actually playing would do, such as rebalancing her torso. Like, well seated.
Oh, that's real creepy.
Yeah. And so she's quite something. And the next one that you probably also have seen is the Draftsman, which is a young, like a little boy who draws 4 different images. He can draw a portrait of Louis XV, A royal couple that is believed to be Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. A dog with Montoto, which is apparently my doggy, written beside it, and a scene of Cupid driving a chariot pulled by a butterfly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the draftsman works by using a system of cams, which is spelled CAMS, that are basically spinning wheels that come into contact with tabs that are sticking up.
So, kind of like gears.
Yeah. Well, it looks more to me like music box stuff.
Oh, okay.
Except more robust. And it's not making noise. It is driving different mechanical parts. So, I guess very small motors, almost.
Okay.
But he works by using a system of those that code the movements of the hands in 2 dimensions, and then another one to lift the pencil. This drawing boy also moves on his chair and periodically blows on the pencil to remove dust.
Oof.
And as far as we know, this automaton has the most extensive mechanical memory of any known automaton. And you can actually see all 3 of the ones that I'm talking about, there's video. They still exist, and they are still in beautiful working shape.
So I guess there's got to be a continual roll of paper then that he draws on, and what happens when the pencil gets down, and
I have no idea. I expect that they get changed.
That makes sense.
Because it's individual sheets of paper.
Oh, okay.
As far as I recall. And so the third that you've probably also seen, even if you don't think you have, is the writer, which is the most complex of the 3. It uses a similar system to the one used for the draftsman for each letter. And he is able to write any custom text up to 40 letters long. Though the text is rarely changed, he can be programmed to write whatever you want. Yeah. And
He's
so
just writing "help me" over and over again.
Oh dear God. So the text is coded on a wheel where the characters are selected one by one. He uses a goose feather to write, which he inks from time to time, including a shake of the wrist to prevent ink from spilling.
Wow.
Yeah, his eyes follow the text being written, and his head moves when he takes some ink. And he's about 2 feet and 4 inches tall. And they all seem to be more or less around that size, of these 3. So, yeah, there were, those are the 3 that you're likely to have seen that are in good shape that give you nightmares. But there are also, Marie Antoinette owned an automaton that played, what did it play? A dulcimer. Right. It played a dulcimer and is dressed in full court and may or may not contain Marie Antoinette's own hair as its hair. And it was made for Marie Antoinette in 1784. by David Rogan-Ten, who was a cabinet maker, as a surprise to his patron, who was Louis XVI, for his queen. And so she's this small carved wooden woman, and also seems to be wearing a dress made from the fabric of one of the queen's own dresses. And she manipulates the strings with metal hammers, and she can play 8 different tunes, and her head moves as she plays.
Wow.
Yep, and this also still exists, and you can see video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there are many. So some of the surviving ones look sort of like something that you would find in like Coney Island side shows, like Zoltar, the fortune teller.
I love Zoltar.
Me too. And as someone for whom Coney Island is very near, like I have been to see Zoltar several times, and it still works. So do all of the weird astrology ones. But so there are those sort of, there's that level of automaton that still exists, and it's still a thing today. I mean, we've all probably been to Chuck E. Cheese, or back when it was Showbiz Pizza.
Showbiz was way better than Chucky.
I agree completely. And so those were all automatons.
Yep.
Disney is filled with automatons.
It's a small world.
Oh, and what, the Bear Jamboree, whatever it is. Like, and the Hall of Presidents. Those are all automatons. And so there are just a lot of different levels of automata, and some of them move very smoothly and are very like Uncanny Valley and make you want to run and scream. Some of them move more jerky and sort of remind me of the people, ventriloquists, there we go, ventriloquist dummies. But there are many. And
which are creepy in their own right.
Yes, they totally are. And yeah, I am just consistently overwhelmed by the variety. So there are Japanese tea serving clockworks.
Ooh.
There are just many variations, and so I will put a bunch of links and to videos and stuff like that in the show notes, and maybe don't watch right before you go to bed. But also, while doing this research, I watched a documentary that was also really neat, that that showed a lot of the history, and also talked to craftspeople who are still capable of, generally repairing fine clocks. Nice. But it is, where did it go? I have lost it. DDD. I really did lose it. I think I closed it. Hellblast damn. Hold that thought. Oh, it is called Mechanical Marvels Clockwork Dreams. And it's a BBC 4. But you can get it in the US legally on Amazon. And you can also get it on Apple TV, which is where I got it. And so
I will have to check that out.
It was totally worth the watch, and that's what I was watching right before bed last night. Because,
like you do,
why not?
Yeah, I managed to do my own. Probably shouldn't have before bed as well when researching our Patreon episode.
Exactly. And I should also mention that automaton were not always people, because this will come up in our Patreon episode. So if you aren't a member, go do that because you want to hear about it. But like super ornate singing birds were a thing for a while. And like talking heads, literally talking heads, which I'm not actually sure if that was the origin of that phrase. Because they were definitely an automata phenomenon for a while. But yeah, so you could also do animals and toys, like many different variations. There's a famous tiger that is wooden, I believe. So there are lots of variations in what can be done, and you can actually find a decent number of them not in working order that exist, that if you had the skill to repair them, they're the creepiest shit you've ever seen.
That just sounds like challenge accepted to me, is what that sounds like.
And I have run into one in person. I have a friend who had, like I said, a boyfriend of a friend who had a show on the Discovery Channel who has a building with a basement filled with stuff and a backyard filled with stuff. And there are like fun house things and freak show things and a damn partial faced automaton that I ran into once. Wait, the statute of limitations has not passed on that, so I'm actually gonna leave it there. Yeah.
I love you.
And I will not mention his name because I do not want people to like break into his shit.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
And during Patreon, I'll be discussing one of my favorite, but also I require medication to get through it, places in Wisconsin, House on the Rock, and there are a disturbing amount of automatons there as well.
I found, like, you know the old school fun houses where you sit in the train and go through and they're the things that, I thought those were too much for me when I was young. So
I don't do well with things that jump out at me.
Which
is why, like, I'm not allowed, literally not allowed in, like,
just
3 different
say
haunted
no
houses.
To the jump scare.
Right, because if you jump out in front of me, I will hit you and then run. Like, I am fight and flight. Like, I'll be like, pow, pow, and then run away.
Yeah, and my center of gravity is low, so assuming you're a male entity jumping out at me, gonna hit you in the balls and you're gonna go down. Yeah. But I'm not going down because I'm 5 feet tall.
Right. I took out a Leatherface at the Hubertus House of Horrors.
Oh, no.
They're not supposed to touch you. I must have muttered that like 20 times when they were dragging me out of there. But this guy that popped up from in the wall, right, this guy popped out from the wall behind me and put his arm around my chest and had me pinned against the wall.
Oh, no.
As the Leatherface came at me with a chainsaw. And that's when all hell broke loose, and I was like, whoopah! And then, so I kicked the Leatherface and then turned around and punched the guy behind me, and everybody was like, what is going on? I'm like, and I just kept screaming, you're not supposed to touch me! Like,
they're lucky you didn't go for the eyes.
Consent. Right? I was like, look, like, I had enough sense that it wasn't real, but don't pin me against a wall and then put a chainsaw at me. It's just not going to work well for you. So yeah, poppy outie thing's not my thing.
So, now that we've talked about our history of misdemeanors, although I think yours was arguably self-defense.
That's what I'm saying. I think that me yelling, you're not supposed to touch me, is probably early days respect and consent, you know? Like, which is what my
also, they're not supposed to touch you.
Seriously.
Like, they're not.
Yeah, so.
They're not. So do we want to, on that note, maybe mosey on over to our weekly worst way to die?
I think that's a good place to go.
All right. So, I think my worst way to die would be as a soul trapped inside the writing automaton from Jacques Drosses.
Ooh.
That can only write what you tell it to write, but but writes all the time forever.
I would just, and you want to write help me, and you can, oh yeah.
Yep, no, and your eyes are moving and you can see what's going on, and yet, wasn't there an Are You Afraid of the Dark that was that?
I think so. There must be.
Yeah, maybe a ventriloquist dummy for that. Anyway,
yeah, so that sounds right.
That's my weekly worst way to die.
So my weekly worst way to die is mannequin related, but specifically the hundreds of mannequins in various dress with giant wings and the ceiling of the carousel room of House on the Rock. Either them falling on me and I get smothered to death, or they come alive and take me out.
Why can't you see her nipple?
I put a picture.
Yes.
In the show notes.
Yes, there's a picture.
Oh, there's mini nipples. There's mini. We'll get into that to the Patreon thing, but yeah, that's full on her nipple just hanging out. That is how big that is. Like a normal human woman dressy thing on her. And there's hundreds of those.
And they're all bigger than me, almost certainly.
Those are the ones that are, there's also, well, we'll get into it in that. I don't want to go down that road.
You know what you shouldn't do in there?
Yeah.
Don't blink.
Don't blink. Do not blink at all.
Don't blink.
Seriously, it is straight up.
The angels have the TARDIS.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So that right there.
Yeah. So also, because we also want to know what you think would be the worst way to die every week, we're going to start putting a poll up on our Patreon page so you can weigh in and see who wins each week.
Yes.
And obviously, well, at least I think on polls you can comment and tell us if you have a scarier one.
Yes, absolutely. And if you're not a Curiosity Shop member, and you want to be spooky internet friends with us, we are Bones and Bobbins on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also find us at bonesandbobbins.com.
Indeed. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast. Because, it pleases the internet gremlins, and that's how we show up in recommendations so that other morbid souls can find us. And who doesn't want to find us, honestly?
Yes. Seriously. And on that note, let us leave you with some advice that you should never forget.
Mm-hmm.
Lock your doors.
And don't run with scissors.
Each episode of the Bones and Bobbins podcast is written and researched by Haley Pearson Cox and Natalie Hoyce. Our music was composed by Loyalty Freak Music. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bones and Bobbins. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts so you won't miss a minute of our strange and creepy content.